In part 2 of the skeletal system, we're going to talk about the adult skeleton. All right, the adult skeleton, as our primary focus this quarter, as discussed on pages 18 and 19 of your textbook, has two functional divisions. The first of these is the axial division. This includes the skull, which is called the cranium. There are 28 bones in the skull. This includes the hyoid. Wow, that picture's messed up. That's from your textbook. The hyoid is this little bone right there. It's at the very top of the larynx, top of your voice box, so it's in your throat. All right, so we found he's a little odd. We'll talk about him specifically. We're going to talk about all of these specifically, so let's do a little more introduction. There is the rib cage, which is 25 bones. That's 24 ribs plus your sternum and your costal cartilage. There's also the vertebral column, and this one is generally of some importance to chiropractors. Still haven't completely figured that one out. That was a smile. There are 26 bones in the adult skeleton. We're going to discuss how the vertebrae form from 33 segments, but since some of them fuse, you wind up with fewer number of bones. So some vertebrae are larger, some are smaller. Again, we spend an entire week on that. Then there's your appendicular skeleton. And your appendicular skeleton consists of the upper limb and the pectoral girdle. And there are 64 bones total. So that's in both upper limbs. And then the lower limb and the pelvic girdle has 62 bones. Now, the adult has 206 bones total, typically. The fetal skeleton, so right about the time of birth, whenever you see, we'll talk about when things start forming, but the fetus prior to birth has 276 bones. And this is going to develop in a combination of the bones are going to develop in separate pieces, particularly your long bones and the vertebrae, so they can grow. So if we take the humerus as an example, the humerus found right here, keep doing that, right here, is actually made up of 3 bones. There are 2 ends, which are called epiphyses plural. There is the shaft, which is the diaphysis. So if you have 2 of these and 1 of these, you have 3 individual bones that fuse into 1 bone in the adult. So we do shorten the number of bones or decrease the number of bones by fusing them. But we're also going to learn that along the way we're going to make a few new ones. So it's not just taking away, we're going to add together. And that's how we lose technically 70 bones between the fetal and the adult skeletons. Now, while we have the skeleton, I want to make a few distinctions about terms, because I told you in one of the earlier lectures you needed to look at body regions. And while I have a little time, I want to go over this. So I'm going to make this bigger again so we can look. We'll just look at this posterior one because I haven't drawn much on it. All right. What we see is this is your entire upper extremity, not your arm. Welcome to anatomy. We have our own language. The upper extremity is made up of the clavicle and scapula, which is called part of the pectoral girdle, so that's the pectoral region. We actually divide that into pectoral and scapular. So these again make up what's called the pectoral girdle. We then have the humerus, which is called your arm. And then we have the radius and ulna, which is called the forearm. And then finally you have the hand, which is called the manus. And you have the shoulder joint, and you have the elbow joint and the wrist joint, and all your fingers, by the way, you have a palm in your hand and you have a finger. And the fingers are made up of phalanges, just to say on this one because it bugs me. The singular of phalanges is phalanx. And it takes 2 to 3, depending on which finger. Phalanges will make a finger, which is called a digit. So we don't say arm anymore, meaning the entire structure. From now on, when you say arm, you are only talking about this area. And if we're talking about the front, it's the forearm, or another name for the forearm is the antebrachium, which means I am before the arm. So what we call the arm is also called the brachium. And this is an important part because if you know brachium means arm, then you know triceps brachii is in the arm, and biceps brachii is in the arm, and coracobrachialis is in the arm, and brachialis is in the arm. And so we're going to talk about this next quarter with the muscles, how knowing these names will help you place muscles and make it easier to, quote, memorize them, so that you learn it instead of memorizing it. All right, we'll work again with body regions as we go through.